Bonjour et bienvenue à notre réunion de midi en ligne et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le lundi 29 novembre. Let me start with an update to the President's agenda for this week. Tomorrow afternoon, the President will receive the Prime Ministers of Georgia, Moldova and of Ukraine. On Thursday, she will attend the lighting of the Euro Hanukkah. Et maintenant, je vais passer la parole à Sonia pour une annonce sur un événement important qui commence aujourd'hui, qui fait partie de nos efforts pour renforcer le développement et la production des vaccins. Sonia.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour. Today and tomorrow, the Commission is hosting the second pan-European matchmaking event, which brings together EU companies to help strengthen their position in value chains for COVID-19 therapeutics and foster connections and cooperation between them. The event gathers companies from the European Economic Area, as well as other businesses and organizations included in the portfolio of the 10 most promising treatments for COVID-19, which also is part of the Commission's therapeutic strategy. In particular, more than 140 representatives of 130 organizations from 20 member states and 8 non-EU participants will attend the event. The focus is on therapeutics specifically used to treat COVID-19, but also on the production of disposable materials and ingredients needed for making these medicines. This edition follows 2 matchmaking events on therapeutics and on vaccines, which took place earlier this year. For more information, please consult our daily news. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Sonia. Puis je vous rappelle qu'un conseil éducation, jeunesse, culture et sport se tient aujourd'hui de l'autre côté de la rue. Les commissaires Maria Gabriel et Nicolas Schmitt y représentent la Commission. Les ministres discuteront de l'apprentissage hybride, de l'éducation et des compétences numériques, des espaces civiques pour une participation effective de la jeunesse, de la disponibilité et de la compétitivité des contenus audiovisuels et médiatiques européens et d'un modèle européen du sport. Une conférence de presse avec la commissaire Gabriel aura lieu vers 18h ce soir et donc, comme d'habitude, je vous remercie de réserver vos questions sur ces sujets pour cette conférence de presse. Et avec ceci, nous sommes prêts à prendre vos questions. Je vais passer la parole à Pascal sur Interactio. Pascal.
Oui, bonjour, vous m'entendez ?
Je t'en prie, Pascal, oui.
Alors, ma question est donc une question sur l'espace et pour Sonia, qui est encore sur le podium. Je voulais savoir où on en était, en fait, sur les négociations quant à la contribution du Royaume-Uni au programme de Copernicus. Je crois que la date butoir a été fixée au 30 novembre, donc demain, et je voulais savoir si la Commission européenne avait trouvé un accord sur les 750 millions d'euros manquants. Je vous remercie.
Sonia.
Merci beaucoup Pascal pour ta question qui est très importante et qui soulève du financement du programme Copernicus. Alors, les conditions de la participation de la Grande-Bretagne au programme de l'Union européenne sont fixées dans l'accord du commerce et coopération entre l'Union européenne et le Royaume-Uni. Plus particulièrement, les modalités sont déterminées dans les 2 protocoles qui sont en train maintenant de passer par le processus interne. Et ce qui concerne le financement du programme Copernicus, alors avec l'adoption du règlement du programme spatial européen, le financement de la mise en œuvre de tous les programmes de l'Union européenne dans le domaine spatial est assuré. Plus concrètement sur le Copernicus, la poursuite du programme, mais aussi le développement des nouvelles évolutions est prévu, aussi dans le même programme et dans le même règlement qui a été adopté. Alors, on est en train maintenant de déterminer un calendrier avec l'Agence européenne spatiale, comment on va mettre en œuvre ces nouvelles évolutions, par exemple la préparation de nouvelles constellations pour assurer un mesurage plus précis. Alors, juste pour te rassurer que le financement du Copernicus et la mise en œuvre est pleinement assuré par le budget européen. Et naturellement, un budget supplémentaire qui venait du Royaume-Uni va aider à l'accélération de cette mise en œuvre.
Merci. Pascal, tu as une question de suivi?
Oui, juste pour être sûr. Donc, il y a un accord entre le Royaume-Uni et la Commission européenne sur la contribution britannique. Et si oui, à quelle hauteur? Merci.
Pour le moment, je ne peux pas dire plus que ça, en fait.
Donc, si je comprends bien, un accord avec le Royaume-Uni permettrait d'augmenter le budget, mais nous n'y sommes pas encore. Voilà. OK. Merci, Sonia. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur l'espace pour Sonia? Je n'en vois pas. Merci, merci beaucoup. Je passe la parole à Jean-Pierre.
Bonjour Eric, bonjour tout le monde. Vous m'entendez?
Oui, nous t'entendons et te voyons.
Magnifique. Une question de politique internationale. Un rapport est sorti ce matin dans EU Observer évoquant une note du service européen concernant la Centrafrique et le fait qu'un bataillon entier de l'armée centrafricaine, formé par l'Union européenne, serait sous le contrôle du groupe russe de mercenaires Wagner. Alors je me demandais quelle était exactement la teneur de ce rapport et quelles sont les suites éventuelles qui y sont réservées si ce qu'il dit a été confirmé depuis lors. Merci beaucoup.
Namila.
Bonjour Jean-Pierre et merci pour ta question. Bon, comme tu le sais, nous ne faisons pas de commentaires sur des rapports qui ont été fuités. À propos de notre proposition, notre position sur le groupe Wagner est très claire. Le haut représentant lui-même en a parlé dans son speech la semaine dernière au Parlement européen. L'Union européenne est de plus en plus alarmée par les activités du groupe Wagner qui aurait des liens étroits avec la Russie et serait représenté dans les 23 pays africains. Dans leur statut juridique est vague, ainsi que leur modus operandi, leur objectif et leur cible aussi. Il est évidemment très difficile de prévenir et de garantir l'obligation de rendre des comptes en cas de violation potentielle des droits de l'homme et du droit humanitaire international dans le contexte d'une telle ambiguïté. Donc on est très alarmés et voilà, c'est ce que je peux te dire à ce stade, mais je ne peux pas faire de commentaires sur le rapport en question.
Jean-Pierre, tu as une question de suivi.
Vous ne commentiez pas le rapport, mais ce rapport, il existe donc bel et bien, si je comprends bien. Et deuxièmement, où en est-on exactement dans les projets de sanctions contre Wagner qui concernaient à l'époque le Mali? Est-ce qu'elles peuvent être étendues désormais à d'autres pays?
Alors, je vais revenir à ce qui a été dit, en effet, comme tu le disais, sur le Mali, sur le projet de sanctions sur le groupe Wagner. En fait, lors du Conseil des affaires étrangères du 15 novembre, le haut représentant l'a dit dans sa conférence de presse, qu'il y avait un consensus pour aller de l'avant et pour prendre des mesures restrictives dès que possible. Et l'idée, ce serait d'utiliser des régimes de sanctions existants pour aller de l'avant vers ces sanctions. Donc, pour l'instant, tout cela est évalué dans les groupes de travail concernés et on verra comment est-ce qu'on va aller de l'avant là-dessus dans les prochains jours.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions relatives à ce sujet? Non. Alors, je passe à Mosé, qui avait une autre question de relations internationales. Mosé, vas-y. Go ahead, Mosé.
Okay, fine. Okay, thank you, Eric. Now it works. Yes, it's a question related to today's restart of the nuclear talks between Iran and the signatories of powers about possible, let's say, return to the original nuclear deal. And that perhaps seems more unlikely in the current situation. As we know, there are at least, let's say, 2 EU member states, Germany and France, who are involved in these talks, besides the United Kingdom. We asked before about the role of the High Representative and the European Union. Is it limited strictly, let's say, to coordinating the talks, or, let's say, is the EU trying to, let's say, form its own opinion in these very difficult talks? Is there, that is my concrete question, is there, let's say, a common EU position on these talks and what they should result in? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mose, for your question. As you know, I mean, the Joint Commission and the talks that are taking place today are chaired on behalf of the EU High Representative Josep Borrell by the Deputy Secretary General of the European External Action Service, Enrique Mora. The EU, the High Representative, is of course the coordinator of these talks. When it comes to the resumption of the talks today, it's a very important step. That today there are the resumption of the talks in Vienna. It is now crucial to pick up from where we left it last June, and that all sides work swiftly and constructively to bring the JCPOA back on track as soon as possible. At this stage, talks are ongoing, as you know, and we cannot comment further on what is happening right now as we speak in Vienna. The full JCPOA implementation is the only way, at least that's our position, for the international community to get the necessary assurances on Iran's nuclear program and for Iran to reap the full benefits of the JCPOA. Of course, diplomacy is the only way forward, and the High Representative, as I said, as the coordinator of the JCPOA, remains committed to doing everything possible to bring the agreement back on track.
Thank you. Are there other questions on... Mose, you have a follow-up.
A very quick follow-up. Does this mean that, in fact, there is no common EU position on these talks, because it's very difficult, let's say, to resume the talks where they ended last time, or even, let's say, to return to original agreement, and a lot of discussion about alternatives to that. I mean, is this something where EU has any position? That is my question.
The position has not changed. The EU have always been backing these talks. The EU, the High Representative, has a very clear mandate, and diplomacy is according to the EU and to the mandate that the HRVP has. Diplomacy is the only way forward.
Thank you. Other questions on these talks? No other foreign relations questions for Nabila, who's also representing Peter, as you can see. Hans.
Yes, thank you, Eric. And hello, Nabila. This is Hans van der Burchert with Politico. I've got a question on Venezuela and the accusations by Venezuelan President Maduro overnight, saying that the EU Electoral Observatory mission basically are spies and seeking to smear the outcome of the election. I would like to hear the EU's reaction to that, and also more broadly how you would qualify the outcome and the usefulness of this observatory mission, given that there was some internal criticism, mainly from the centre-right party in the European Parliament. Thank you.
Nabila.
Thanks, Hans, for your question. I mean, we never comment on comments, As you know, you've been in this press room for such a long time that you probably know that. On the election observation mission, it carries out an independent, impartial, and technical assessment of the electoral process in respect of the international standards. This is the position of the EU. This is the role of the election observation mission. And that's what I have to say at this point in time.
Thank you. Nawab.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I have a question on Afghanistan. We have seen the press release yesterday on the talks which were held at the weekend. So now what is going to happen now? When will the EU open its delegation or trip there? And will your humanitarian assistance continue?
Thank you. Nabila.
Thanks a lot, Nawab. As you know, I mean, you have seen, obviously, the press release from yesterday. The idea is that we will continue the talks and we will continue to engage with the Taliban to be able to make sure that we can actually provide as much as we can the humanitarian access to Afghanistan. You would have seen in the press release that this was part of the discussions that were yesterday with the Taliban. I think this is going. It's at least so far we can say that the discussions were. I wouldn't want to say. I mean, we will see the actions after these discussions. So we will continue to discuss. We will continue to ask for access. When it comes to the presence in Kabul, as I said, this is something that we are we are discussing, and once the security. Once the security measures are appropriate, we will make sure that we have a presence there.
Thank you. Other questions on Afghanistan for Nabila? Other foreign relations related questions? Yes, please.
Oui, bonjour, Mathieu Bion, Agence Europe, sur l'Amérique latine. Est-ce que vous pouvez donner plus d'informations sur le mini-sommet qui aura lieu en visioconférence jeudi? Quels sont les pays latino-américains qui participeront, les thèmes et éventuellement les horaires de ce mini-sommet en visioconférence? Merci.
Oui.
Écoute, merci pour ta question. Et pour l'instant, je ne peux pas donner beaucoup d'informations là-dessus. Je reviendrai vers toi et on communiquera sur les détails de toute façon de ce mini-sommet quand on aura plus de détails.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions relations extérieures pour Nabila? Ça n'est pas le cas. Et donc, je reviens vers Oliver, merci Nabila, qui avait une question sur un autre sujet. Oliver.
Hi, thank you. Polish media report today that the Polish government is planning to introduce an obligatory quarantine for every traveler coming from a country where the new Omicron variant has been detected. So far, they seem to be working on these plans, but they don't seem to discriminate between EU citizens and, people coming from EU countries and from outside of the EU. My question is, did the Polish government liaise with you beforehand, and would such a blanket quarantine on any travelers coming from countries with a certain variant, from countries that are member states of the EU, would that be legal? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Christian.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver, for that question. Let me maybe, first of all, remind you that we have just proposed to update the rules on coordination of safe and free movement in the EU, which were put in place in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure you followed the press conference on this with Commissioner Reinders last week. This proposal is now discussed with EU member states. Actually, now as we speak, there is a first IPCR meeting that is discussing this, and of course also the current situation and the latest developments. So, of course, we will continue, and we are continuing to work with member states on a coordinated approach on this basis, on the basis of the certificate, on the basis of the free movement recommendation. As regards to the reports from Poland, according to my latest information, we have not received a notification on this yet. You know that in principle, member states should refrain from imposing additional travel restrictions on holders of the EU digital COVID certificate, in particular on the holders of vaccination certificates and recovery certificates, and should inform the Commission and other member states 48 hours in advance in case they intend to introducing any new restrictions. So we will continue to follow this and work on this issue with our member states.
Thank you. Stefan. On this, I suppose.
Yes, it's actually a follow-up because Switzerland did exactly this, introduce mandatory quarantines for even vaccinated people from several Schengen member countries. So I wanted to know whether Switzerland has to or did notify the Commission and whether this is in line with the rules. Thank you.
Well, on Switzerland, I wouldn't have a particular comment yet. I mean, that is more a question for Switzerland, what rules to apply there. Of course, what is important is that the acceptance as foreseen in the equivalence decision of the European certificate is ensured.
Follow-up.
Switzerland is a Schengen country and is connected to the European gateway with the certificate. So, I mean, this would be the end of the certificate in a way if Schengen countries start to introduce quarantines, no?
Again, well, first of all, I think Christian is saying, look, we need to check, so we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you on that. Remember that the certificate is actually shows what is the status of the person, and it's true that the regulation says that people who are fully vaccinated should not face restrictions, right? So there's also the possibility for a member state under certain conditions to implement an emergency break, but that is something that we will have to come back to you on then. Okay. Any other questions on these issues? Alain.
Oui. Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
J'imagine sur le même sujet.
Oui. Vous m'entendez?
Ben oui, puisque je viens de te dire.
Okay.
Je t'en prie.
Merci Eric. Non, pardon, j'ai pas la caméra. J'ai juste parce que j'ai pris le briefing en cours. Peut-être avez-vous répondu à cette question. Est-ce que d'autres États membres de Schengen ont envisagé, je crois qu'il y a une notification de 48 heures, ont annoncé, envisagé, imposer des restrictions comme celle donc que la Suisse a imposée depuis vendredi? Merci.
Effectivement, je veux bien qu'on revienne sur un sujet, mais quand même, quand vous vous connectez en cours de route, c'est quand même quelque chose. Il faut quand même d'abord écouter les questions qui sont posées, parce que sinon on s'en sort pas. On répond 4 fois aux mêmes questions. Nous avons déjà répondu à cette question. Alain, il y a une réunion de IPCR qui est en cours à l'heure actuelle, où ces questions sont en train d'être discutées, et donc je pense que le meilleur, c'est d'attendre le résultat de cette réunion pour revenir sur ce sujet. Susanna.
Yes, sorry to insist, even if I will have to wait also for the IPCR meeting's conclusion. But on Friday, Adalbert said that the Commission was analysing the Portuguese situation and the fact that the government decided to ask for tests to all those travelling to Portugal, no matter they were holding a vaccination certificate or not. Just to understand if the Commission itself, not IPCR, came to a conclusion, and if you received any information or any, I don't think it's a notification, it's more information, but regarding the triggering of the emergency brake. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're talking about people coming from other EU member states or from outside the EU, Susanna? Go ahead.
From the 27.
Okay.
Actually, that is the rule now in Portugal, not only from outside the EU, but also from the EU.
Okay.
I can say a few words on this. Just let me first clarify one more thing on Switzerland, as it came to me now. Switzerland is not covered by the free movement recommendation, so there's a difference there. It is covered by an equivalence decision, but we will come back to you and we will check in more detail if there's anything more to say, as Eric said. On Portugal, we have indeed received a notification on new travel measures that Portugal is planning to introduce as of the 1st of December. We will now carefully analyze the information provided. In principle, as I've just said, member states should refrain from imposing additional travel restrictions on holders of the EU digital COVID certificate, in particular the vaccination and recovery certificate, and should inform the Commission and other member states 48 hours in advance of any such intended measures. It remains important that member states stick to the coordinated approach to ensure safe and free travel in the EU.
We must, I believe, continue with the approach that we have set in the context of the regulation on the EU digital COVID certificate. We have been there in the past, last year, when we saw the impact of restrictions to free travel within the European Union. So let us be extremely clear. It is paramount that member states discuss among themselves and communicate to each other and coordinate their actions. And secondly, that we continue to implement the measures that are foreseen in the EU digital COVID certificate, in particular when it comes to not imposing undue barriers to travel for those who either have been fully vaccinated, have a PCR test, or can show that they have recovered from COVID. That being said, of course, we continue and we will continue to discuss with member states, as we are doing as we speak in the IPCR, on the evolution of the situation. Susanna, you have a follow-up.
Yes, just a few, if I can ask for a few details. First of all, when did you receive these notification? And I was checking the the Reopen EU website, and I could not find any other country imposing such a measure to other EU member states. Can you just confirm that this is the case, that Portugal is the only one doing it? And very quickly, I know that you are analyzing it, but just to understand, are you analyzing it if this is proportionate? Thank you.
Well, Susanna, this is very fresh information. I think we received it earlier this morning. So you will understand that I will now not, on the podium, improvise here on something that our experts need to look into in more detail. As regards other measures, as I would have to double check, but as you know, and as I've repeated here this morning, there is an obligation for member states to indeed notify any such measures. As far as I'm aware, there have not been similar measures taken recently by other member states, but again, let me double check this.
Angela.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. We can't hear you now. We could, but we could no longer hear you. Go ahead. I don't know if it's the speak button or your mic source, which you have inadvertently switched. Okay, whilst you try... Yes, go ahead. Now it works. Go ahead.
Yes, okay. It's a kind of a follow-up to Susanna's question. I was wondering if you had in contact with any other member state who, in the light of the Omicron alarm, has asked to impose... Maybe you can't hear me anymore.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
To impose COVID test beside the certificate. I repeat, in the light of the alert which we had last Friday on the last variant. And if you exclude that this could be, I know that the recommendation says that you can't ask for quarantine or COVID test now beside the certificate. Do you exclude, as von der Leyen is saying, that it's a rush and we have to do something, etc.? Do you exclude that a COVID test could be decided with a coordination of member states? Thank you.
Look, we're not going to go into speculation. As we've said, there is an IPCR which is currently ongoing. We all know that the basis on which we are working is the EU DCC regulation and the recommendations that are linked to this. In that context, we made on Friday a certain number of proposals as concerns travel into the EU from third countries. Now, this first IPCR, which met on Friday to discuss this, came to a certain number of decisions when it comes to travel from outside the EU. And now today's IPCR, which is meeting as we speak, is discussing more broadly and more generally what is the situation when it comes to the Omicron virus, and more generally the situation with the pandemic. And the Commission is participating fully in this meeting. So we are going to wait for the result of this meeting and for further updates before we start commenting on what are possible next steps. But our position remains what it has always been when it comes to travel within the EU. Mose.
Yes, I would also like to come back with a question about this IPCR meeting. It was a meeting, as you said, on Friday, and now there's another meeting today, obviously. And to me, it was very confusing to wait, let's say, for the results or decision of the meeting on Friday, because we got the impression from the press briefing on Friday that will be some full information about the outcome of that meeting. But I understand that this let's say, crisis response group doesn't publish its decision, and they're quite confidential. And we only got was, let's say, the tweets from you and from the EU presidency, and I'm afraid they were not, let's say, that full.
Mose, sorry, what is your question, please? I'm sorry,
my question is, okay, sorry, I asked you the background, because it was confusing to me, let's say, to try to report about the outcome of the meeting, and I was expecting some kind of press release from the Commission, but only got the tweets, which were very brief and not complete. That is my question.
That's not a question, that's a statement. It's a meeting of the IPCR, which is a council group. So please address your question to the Council. I provided as much detail as I could, and I think the Commission was extremely transparent on the operational decision which was taken, or the recommendation that came out of the IPCR for member states to implement. But I find it quite amazing that we would be asked to publish press releases on a council meeting. Mose, a very, very short follow-up.
I'm very sorry that you feel like that, but that's what we expected, I think, from that press conference on Friday, because it's a decision which is about to say a coordinated European approach to this
What
crisis.
Press conference? What press conference, Mose?
I'm talking about the midday press conference by the Commission. Okay, it was a bit confusing, but what I thought was missing in the tweets was that this crucial sentence of suspending flights from Southern Africa. And that was very important, and I don't understand why.
Look, I believe my tweet was as clear as it could be based on the results of the IPCR. If you have further questions to ask, I would recommend that you contact the Council or the Presidency, who was responsible for calling this meeting, and get the supplementary information from them. Right. Are there other questions for us on free movement within the EU in this context? That is not the case. Are there other questions for us today? Yes, please.
Hi, this is Monica from the New York Times. I've got a question that might be for Adalbert or Christian, I'm not sure. You mentioned a while ago that you were analyzing the Polish legislation legalizing pushbacks. I was wondering, do you have any update on that? And then kind of my second question, which is connected to the first one, is that the Polish Senate is currently debating a new law that introduces a sort of permanent state of emergency, and I was wondering whether the Commission is looking into that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Adalbert.
Thank you, Monica. I don't have any news about the state of progress of our work on the Polish law at present. However, I will very happily check and get back to you should we have a bit more to share at this point. And of course, we follow very closely the developments in the member states, both the ongoing procedures and any completed procedures. But we are not in a position to comment on ongoing procedures, and therefore I will also not be able to tell you very much at this point.
Right. Other questions for Adalbert? Yes. Joe.
Thank you, Eric. So on the issue that France, Netherlands, Germany and Belgium basically asked Frontex yesterday if they could operate aerial surveillance over the Channel area, could you tell us which member state or which nation the company is from that will be supplying the equipment, whether it be planes or drones flying over the Channel, please? Thank you.
I'm afraid I cannot. The deployments requested by member states and operated by Frontex is something that is in the first instance discussed between those member states and the agency, which is independent from the Commission. And therefore, I would have to refer you to the Frontex press office and see if they would be able to provide this kind of information.
Joe, follow up.
And then just on a more broader point, does the Commission feel that the kind of well-publicised and well-reported delay to starting an aerial surveillance operation over the Channel because of France rejecting the idea that a British company that won a tender contract through the normal European procurement systems to operate these surveillance flights, do you feel that this delay, because of that rejection, has somehow reduce safety in the Channel for migrants looking to cross and potentially led to kind of more deaths that have been probably needed? Thank you.
I would not be able to go into any speculations about the many reasons for which this strategy on which we've expressed ourselves in the past happened, and neither am I able to really comment about ongoing discussions between the member states and the agency when it comes to any specific deployments. As I said, Frontex is an independent EU agency which is accountable to the European Parliament and the Council, but which is not under direct control of the Commission, and therefore you would need to check with them for any details of these discussions, to the extent that the agency is able to disclose them.
Any other questions for Adalbert on the migration issue? Please only keep your hand raised if it is on this. Tony.
Thank you very much. Is there anything you can say on a potential agreement between the UK and the EU on migration, on returns? Some of the reporting on the meeting yesterday seemed to suggest that there would be some potential agreement on returns or on migration. I don't know if that is, I've picked that reporting up wrong, or is there anything you can say on what potentially might happen as a result of this meeting or as a result of these ongoing concerns? Thank you.
Look, about any potential agreements, all I can say is just repeat that the Trade and Cooperation Agreement with the UK, which provides a comprehensive framework for the relationship with the UK, which I think you know very, very well, Tony, is this key framework, and our key focus remains on its implementation. It does not contain provisions on asylum and return, and any possible putative intention to consider any supplementary agreement on new policy areas such as asylum and return would have to be first discussed and agreed with the member states as well as with the European Parliament. Now, when it comes to any kind of cooperation with the UK on this issue, you may know that there is practical cooperation between the UK and the coastal member states, in particular France and Belgium, to prevent and to detect any irregular crossings in the channel. That is underway. And in fact, under the European Multidisciplinary Platform Against Criminal Threats, which is also known as MPACT, the Commission supports a security initiative led by France and with the UK's participation to address crossings in the Channel. That is, I believe, as far as I can go about the situation right now, and I will not be able to tell you anything about what might happen in the future.
Thank you very much. Other questions for Adalbert? That is not the case. So I go back to Peter Kapan, who had a question. Peter. If you're still there, press speak. Hamid, I'm sorry, but we have closed the Foreign Affairs chapter. We have discussed already Afghanistan, so I will ask you to contact Nabila bilaterally on this question. Peter, you have the floor.
Can you hear me now, Eric?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you for the question. I've got a question on the German daily Die Welt. It's reporting today that Executive Vice President Dombrovskis planned to go to the ministerial WTO meeting, which was delayed now, with a new proposal on handling patents on vaccines, which seemed to be a somehow softer stance on this issue by the Commission as it used to be up to now. Can you tell me something about this proposal, which has not been presented yet, and is there a change in the position of the European Union on terminating patents on vaccines?
Thank you very much for the question, Peter, which will allow Miriam indeed to clarify this sensitive issue. Miriam.
Yes, thank you very much. So first of all, let me reiterate that the EU remains fully committed to find a solution. As you know, the MC12 has been postponed because of reasons we know very well, but it doesn't change anything, our efforts to really find a solution and engage with the other members of the WTO. There is a TRIPS meeting today where we will reiterate this position. So in relation to the comments you've made by the EVP, who mentioned this EU engagement and EU proposal last week at the European Parliament, basically this reflects what we have been doing over the last month. So over the last month, the European Union, the European Commission in this case, has been actively engaged in WTO to discuss what we call a targeted waiver on compulsory licensing. So the aim is to facilitate the production of vaccines while at the same time preserving the incentives for research and innovation. And this becomes even more relevant in the current context that we are aware that there are new variants, and we need to ensure that we continue to invest to tackle these new variants and find solutions. So we call now on all WTO members to continue engaging, despite that there is no more MC12, to really find solutions as quickly as possible and to tackle this problem of access of vaccines.
Thank you. Other questions on this issue? Christian, tu as une question sur ce sujet?
Non, c'est pas sur le vaccin. Désolé.
Ok, alors on reviendra vers toi. Anna, on this, vaccine patents.
J'ai aussi la question concernant le vaccin. Lorsque je voudrais savoir comment le contrat des 20 mai signé par la Commission.
Attends, excuse-moi. Je pense que j'ai été clair. On en est sur les questions pour Myriam sur les brevets pour les vaccins. Est-ce que ta question est sur les brevets pour les vaccins? Non, je ne crois pas. D'abord, donc, attendons. Est-ce qu'il y a une question sur les brevets pour les vaccins pour Myriam? Ça ne semble pas être le cas. Donc, je reviens à une question sur d'autres aspects de la vaccination. Et donc, je passe la parole à Christian. Christian.
Non, vous êtes gentil, mais ce n'est pas sur la vaccination. C'est un discours de Breton. Donc, tout à l'heure.
D'accord, j'ai cru que c'était sur les vaccins. Sur les vaccins. OK. Alors, Anna, à toi maintenant.
Si.
Je t'en prie.
Merci. Je voudrais d'avoir la précision parce que maintenant, c'est le 3e contrat entre la Commission et BioNTech Pfizer qui prévoit 900 millions de doses des vaccins actuels. Et dans le contexte nouveau avec Omicron, je voudrais poser la question, est-ce que maintenant il faut appliquer, comment vous appliquez le contrat? Est-ce qu'il faut faire la pause maintenant et déjà soit attendre le variant? Parce que ici, c'est dit que aussi il y a l'option d'acheter additionnel 900 millions de doses des vaccins pour les variants. Donc, c'est la question, est-ce que c'est maintenant la pause, soit la Commission va continuer d'acheter, et comment ça marche avec cette variant Omicron? Merci.
Merci. Question importante. Stéphane.
Merci beaucoup. Ça me permet de clarifier certaines choses, je pense. Donc d'abord, j'aimerais bien souligner que la raison pour laquelle nous avons conclu ce contrat en mai de cette année-ci, c'est entre autres de prévoir la production de boosters et aussi la production de vaccins qui seraient nécessaires pour d'autres catégories de la population et de s'adapter finalement aussi aux variantes du virus. Mais ce qui se passe maintenant, c'est que nous suivons avec les scientifiques, évidemment, la situation scientifique et la situation épidémiologique aussi avec les CDC et les MA. Donc ça, c'est très important. En même temps, les producteurs des vaccins sont en train de vérifier dans quelle mesure, tous dans ce cadre d'analyse scientifique, de vérifier de quelle manière ceci affecterait ou pas les vaccins. Et sur base de cet input scientifique, on verra ensuite comment appliquer évidemment le contrat. Ce contrat, par exemple, avec BioNTech Pfizer, sachez cependant que tous les contrats prévoient en effet l'obligation des manufacturiers, des producteurs de vaccins, d'adapter leurs vaccins aux variantes si cela s'avère nécessaire, mais encore une fois, sur base d'une analyse approfondie du monde scientifique. Donc d'abord, suivons ce qui se passe dans le monde scientifique et puis on voit comment on va appliquer contractuellement ceci.
Mais donc, pour être clair, il n'y a pas de pause dans le contrat. L'entreprise va continuer à livrer des doses du vaccin au Minarti, je crois qu'on l'appelle, en fonction des commandes qui sont passées par les États membres. Donc il n'y a pas du tout d'interruption ou quoi que ce soit. Ce qui se passe, c'est que si nécessaire, l'entreprise sera amenée à livrer des doses d'un vaccin modifié, le moment venu, sur base, là aussi, de demandes de la part des États membres. Et donc, il y a un processus de dialogue entre la Commission, les États membres et le producteur pour voir s'il est nécessaire d'adapter le vaccin et de commander une version modifiée du vaccin ou non. Voilà. Donc, le contrat, de ce point de vue-là, il offre toutes les solutions nécessaires. Anna.
Merci pour follow-up. Mais j'ai aussi la question, est-ce que maintenant il faut attendre 100 jours parce que les producteurs ont dit qu'il faut 100 jours, donc plus que 3 mois, afin de produire le produit qui est adapté à variant Omicron. C'est ça qu'ils ont dit, que j'ai lu dans le...
Déjà, il faut déjà le créer. Si nécessaire, il faudra déjà créer le vaccin. Et je pense que le contrat dit qu'il faut qu'un nouveau vaccin soit disponible dans les 100 jours en termes de développement et ensuite commencer la production. Stéphane, tu as des précisions là-dessus ?
Non, mais le contrat est déjà en cours, par exemple pour les boosters, pour le vaccin pour des enfants. Donc c'est un contrat qui est déjà en cours, mais il y a plusieurs routes vers ce contrat pour l'utilisation de ce contrat, entre autres l'adaptation en effet du vaccin aux nouvelles variantes.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur les vaccins ? Ça n'est pas le cas, donc je clôt le chapitre pandémie et je passe la parole à Christian qui s'exprimera certainement bien mieux que moi ce matin en français. Je t'en prie, Christian.
C'est dommage d'avoir relâché Stéphane parce qu'en fait, je voulais avoir une question de suivi. On est en train d'accélérer les appels à la 3e dose et on ne sait pas du tout si la 3e dose nous protégera contre Omicron. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a une justification ? Est-ce qu'il faut aller vraiment se faire vacciner sur la 3e dose ou est-ce que quand on a un délai, on peut attendre ? Je veux dire, on est très perplexe avec cette nouvelle donne qui est Omicron. L'OMS a lancé un signal d'alerte sur la dangerosité, la contamination. Est-ce que la 3e dose va être obligatoire avec un 4e dans la foulée si jamais c'est nécessaire ? C'est ça ma question parce que franchement, là on est un peu paumé. Et après j'ai une autre question, mais je reviendrai si tu me donnes la parole.
Vas-y.
Merci beaucoup, Christian. Je vais essayer de te déperplexer et de te dépaumer à la fois. Je pense que le message que nous avons passé a été très clair dès le début et c'est un message qui reste très relevant aussi dans le cadre de la nouvelle variante Omicron. D'abord, nous devons continuer à investir pleinement dans la pleine vaccination pour éviter des retards dans la vaccination parce qu'on sait que le vaccin reste le meilleur instrument de lutte contre le vaccin. Comme vous le savez, le taux d'effectivité de ce vaccin est de plus de 80% contre mortalité, contre des maladies graves, contre hospitalisation. Donc ça reste très important. En même temps, nous savons qu'il y a une réduction de l'efficacité du vaccin avec le temps, et c'est pour cette raison-là qu'il est très important que nous passions à un booster. Et là, nous suivons ce que l'EMA et les CDC viennent de nous annoncer. Je fais référence à l'évaluation de risque de la semaine dernière où les CDC a bien souligné l'importance d'un booster pour la population adulte avec une priorité certainement pour les personnes à partir de 40 ans. Donc tout ça reste très important. Évidemment, il y a aussi les interventions non pharmaceutiques qui sont aussi cruciaux, mais tous ces éléments, toute cette mesure de protection nous protègent contre le virus et sont très importants aussi dans la lutte contre les différentes variantes. Donc, ça reste très important de se faire vacciner, de prendre un booster et de suivre les interventions non pharmaceutiques. Merci.
On ne saurait être plus clair. Merci. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions sur ce sujet. Donc, Christian, on revient vers toi pour ton autre question sur, si j'ai bien compris, le discours de Thierry Breton.
Oui, en fait, M. Breton nous a annoncé ce matin que 16 agences de presse venaient de s'associer pour créer une salle de presse européenne et que toute cette initiative qui vise à assurer l'indépendance était financée par la Commission. Alors je voulais savoir quel était le financement et si je pouvais avoir des détails sur les 16 participants. Merci.
Merci. Merci Christian pour ta question. Oui, effectivement, Thierry Breton a donné un discours au Forum pour les News Media européens, European News Media Forum ce matin. La vice-présidente Jourova y sera dans l'après-midi. On a publié un Daily News item, un chapeau dans les Daily News. Et là-dedans, tu as aussi des informations sur le projet dont tu parles. Dans cette initiative, en fait, pour cette initiative, la Commission dépense 1,76 millions d'euros, dans 1,76. Et donc, c'est un consortium des 16 médias européens. Pour la plupart, c'est des agences de presse. En fait, c'est toutes des agences de presse. Et donc, il y a DPA, l'agence allemande qui est en charge, si tu veux, donc qui gère ce consortium. Et tu as 15 autres. Et je peux soit les lire en mettant tous, ou soit je t'envoie ça par mail. Et donc, il y a aussi AFP, qui connaît bien, je pense. Donc, quoi est le but? Le but, c'est d'enrichir le débat dans si tu veux, dans l'espace public européen sur des sujets européens dans plusieurs langues. Donc, ce newsroom sera mis en place quelque part. Donc, on n'a pas encore le lieu. La recherche est en cours. Ça sera ouvert à partir de l'année prochaine, donc mi-22. Mais le projet en soi commence en janvier. Et ben voilà, donc il y a donc 3 personnes, donc 3 salaires, si tu veux, qui sont financés, plus le training et d'autres activités pour justement permettre aux journalistes de travailler ensemble sur des sujets communs, mais bien entendu en pleine indépendance éditoriale. Ça c'est bien évident. Merci.
Merci. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur ce sujet? Non. D'autres sujets pour nous aujourd'hui? Oui.
Thanks, Eric. It's just a really quick one on fishing. The December the 10th date, does the Commission consider that to be a hard deadline? In other words, if you don't achieve all of your objectives by then in the talks on licences with the UK, that's the end of talks and you'll walk away from the table? Thanks.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the question. Indeed, in the call last week, Commissioner Sinkevičius and the State Secretary Justice agreed that they will now intensify the discussions with a view to conclude the current process on December the 10th, by December the 10th, not on. So this is the date we are now looking at. This is with this in mind that the colleagues in the services, as well as, of course, the Commissioner, is really, really involved in the talks and making sure that we find a solution by December the 10th, because we need to make sure that all those vessels that have the right under the TCA to get the licenses would get those. And that's the perspective that we're working on now. Thank you.
Follow-up.
Thanks. Just a really quick one. If there is some progress, could they go beyond that date? Because the Commissioner in his tweet sort of said that you're working towards a solution then, whereas Clement Beaune today said that that's absolutely it. After that date, then there's no more possibility for talks.
Yeah, you know that we don't answer those conditional sentences or questions. So what we're looking at on our side is to now follow up on what has been agreed between the Commissioner and his counterpart to make sure that we now follow up on this shared ambition, which is to finalise all the work and make sure that we have an agreement that is that takes into account everything that was agreed under the TCA. Thank you.
Joe.
Cheers. Thank you. So on December the 11th, would the Commission still be willing to talk? And if not, what happens? Are you just happy to leave the French fishermen with no licences, if there's been no progress, that is?
I think that Vivian has been very clear. We will not speculate on what happens after that. So we'll stick to that, Joe. I'm sorry. Thanks. Okay, any other questions for us today? Not the case. Thank you. See you tomorrow.